Okay, folks, good afternoon. I'm going to open the meeting of the Economic Development Committee. We've got an awful lot of stuff to squeeze in the next hour, so we're going to get started. Mr. Secretary, do we have a quorum? Thank you. We need to adopt the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt? Second? Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Oppose? That's no problem. All right. The minutes from January meeting, I understand we had a little technical glitch, so we're gonna postpone those until the next meeting. And bringing us to public comment, is there any public comment? If so, you can please come up to the podium up there. Kim's not here. I don't know whether anybody's online or not. Don't see any public comment. That's always a good thing. All right, under old business, report to the Board of Supervisors for 2025. I did forward that on to the supervisors last meeting. Very little comment. I think overall they're aware of what we're doing and basically where we're at in our efforts for economic development. Under the new business, we had talked about this, looking at the strategic plan this month, but we're not going to be able to do that because the Board of Supervisors hasn't done theirs. And as we discussed, we want to get guidance from them before we formulate our own strategic initiatives for this year. If you have anything you'd like for me to suggest to the board for strategic initiatives that they might want to include, please pass that along to me. Mr. Weekly, I believe we do that this Thursday, don't we? Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we've been doing a lot of different things. We've had our hands in a lot of different areas, but all of these things certainly relate to economic development. One of the big projects that the Board of Supervisors tasked myself, Mr. Nichols, and Mr. Smith with was revisiting our high-density housing zoning, R3. And Mr. Nichols has been hard at work getting that done, moved the process along very well. Mr. Nichols, would you just like to give a brief overview of where we're at on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, as a part of this initiative, we had 4 goals that we were tasked to look at with the R3 rewrite. One was to preserve and clearly define open space. The provisions that we had previously were muddy at best and would be prone to abuse, the way that we would look at things and the way that a potential developer might. The next one was we were going to strengthen our ingress and egress standards for communities, the idea being that a one-way in, one-way out is not a great idea to do a bunch of houses. We wanted to clarify and lower residential density if we could. We are suggesting that our R3 ordinance be moved from 8 units per acre at maximum density to 4 units per acre. And we wanted to take the big multifamily developments and move those off to their own district. So we have drafted a new, zoning district for the intense multifamily development or more intense single-family uses, which, if it gets through Planning Commission and the board, would allow up to 12 units per acre. However, all of those would be subject to a rezoning, so it would have an enormous amount of discretion by the Planning Commission and the board, and the board would be able to hear proffers on those particular applications. And so the applicant would have a pretty high bar to overcome, to offset adverse impacts to the community. So I think we've done a good job of achieving those goals. And all of the committee members' email, and you may have printed packets here, but definitely in all of your emails are copies of the drafts of the ordinances we've prepared for you to look at. And certainly if anybody has comments, we are accepting those through the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
I have a quick question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Has our attorney looked at this and it's
Going to pass muster?
I copied Mr. Wright on the same email I sent to the planning commissioners and the board. I have not heard commentary from Mr. Wright yet.
Thank you.
Yes, this is set to go to the February 18th Planning Commission workshop.
Anything else? Any other questions for Mr. Nichols? He's done a fabulous job on this, and this was a minefield waiting to happen if we didn't address this. We'll keep you posted. All right,
I'm sorry, I
Mr.
have one
Chairman.
more question.
yes.
Mr. Chairman, real quick to answer your question, I went through the budget calendar. The FY '27 priorities, goals, and strategies is scheduled for February 26th budget work session.
Okay. So we'll take that up on the 26th. Yes.
Mr. Nichols, since I have you here, we had a citizen ask us about ADUs. And they want to get a mother-in-law or mother in the back of their property, with their house. Is that something we allow in Madison County? Is that a SUP, or how does it, just want to get an answer.
So we allow multiple dwellings on an individual parcel as long as you meet the acreage requirements. So if you have an R1 lot that is on private, private well and a private septic system, then as long as you have 1.5 acres per dwelling, you can put as many dwellings as you want up to there, accessory or otherwise. And so that's not a problem. Where the ADU conversation comes in that is problematic from time to time is when it's being used to circumvent the density requirements of our zoning districts. So we hear of these cases in California quite often where somebody has a 15,000 square foot lot, they have a house in the front of it, they've got a large backyard, and then they want to put, a prefab structure in the back, turn it into living quarters, and it circumvents their zoning ordinance, but because it's an accessory unit, it's subservient to the main one. California allows that. I think that ADUs in that regard, by circumventing the density requirements, are problematic. But certainly if somebody has the acreage and they want to put more than one dwelling on the property, they certainly can.
That's been 1.5 acres.
In R1. In agricultural, you'd have to have 6 acres for 2 dwellings. In conservation, you'd have to have 20 acres for 2 dwellings.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, we, in our 4:00 Board of Supervisors meeting, we have our agency reports, and Ms. Gardner gives a Economic Development Department report, and I asked her to just give us a brief overview for this committee at this time. So, Ms. Gardner?
Okay. Try to cipher out which parts I should share here. I presented to the Virginia Economic Development Partner out of Richmond, their international team, on January 15th. That went well. Where are we? So this just came in too. So Thursday, I'm going to go to the Research Park, North Fork, and our Innovation Corridor Strategic Planning Advisory Group is meeting that day. Techonomy is the company they're using. They're making progress with our strategic roadmap project, and at this meeting, they'll share their findings to date and ask for input. So this is the one where we're looking at the 29 corridor. And that goes along with the Virginia Business Ready Sites program is starting to launch their next grants. But Helen from the Central Virginia Partnership had already asked if we wanted to do any other sites, and only Green and I wanted to try to get them characterized, get their tier at least. So just know that I'm looking into that, and I'm doing the webinar for the grants, and we'll talk to Helen in between to see what Go Virginia can cover. That would be March 16th. Those were my main things for right now, other than local stuff going on, talking to Clint about some things. I've talked to REC about some things, but we'll get into that with his project. And most everything else is tourism related.
How's our tourism going up, going down?
Oh, well, right now we're going up. We just did our Toast Virginia webinar for our destination marketing organizations, and we've learned that an average overnight traveler here spends $600. An average overnight wine traveler spends $1,400. So yes, that is agritourism, and that is economic development.
How are we gonna run more to the wineries then?
We got to get Alan Berry drinking. That's my plan.
All
And
right.
we were picked to be a giveaway at Blue Ridge Outdoors as well, so we get all of those leads for free. And then I did an ad with Rose River, and it's their fishing outdoor issue. So we've got a lot going on that front, and the Wine Coalition for Virginia too. And I got my capstone project done,
Good.
so we'll be going to Lynchburg to graduate in April.
Congratulations on that.
Thank
you. One thing I did want to bring up, we don't have time to do it in this meeting, and it's also going to be presented tonight at the Board of Supervisors meeting, was the Virginia PACE funding program, which we could probably share some summaries with everybody next month. But if you're really interested in that, it's a financing program. Stay for the Board of Supervisors meeting.
We have 3 projects interested in that.
3 so far?
3.
Okay, excellent. All right, so thank you, Tracy. Molly was supposed to present next. She's run a little behind. So Clint, how about if you go ahead and present your data center concept, and Trey, Kim will get you hooked up there. She's gonna have to hook you up.
Clint, you want me to say what we learned while you're doing that so far? The location at Madison Plaza where Emmy Lou's was located is 8,000 square feet. There was other people looking into that as well. But for Clint's project, we need to know how much power there was. And I've been going back and forth for 2 weeks trying to get that answer. And we got it today.
Did you?
I actually take that back yesterday afternoon, late afternoon. So it's 1 megawatt that's currently there.
How much does he want to?
He wants 2 total. And then how much does that cost? What's that gonna cost? And you can't get a direct answer. Well, as soon as he has a site plan and a direct, and he's got, sent them everything we have, getting a concrete answer is very difficult with that. But I may find out more about that next week, so.
Good. And then Mr. Nichols, I had forwarded a request to him on the possible need for rezoning, and he did respond, which I passed to you, and also to Clint. So if we proceed forward, he knows what he needs to do with that. All right, Mr. Hyde.
All right, so everybody hears a lot about data center, data center, data center. The amount of money floating around called data center money these days is numbers larger than anybody could imagine. It is ridiculous how big that has gotten. But what is a data center really, if you were going to build one? And you can think of it as a room full of computers with some internet access. Doesn't really amount to a whole lot. The rooms can get fancier depending on how you're trying to do things. But what does a data center actually produce? What is the product that's there? What do you do with your computer now, your laptop, your desktop? You got information you store on it, and you got calculations you do. And a data center is just more of the same on a larger scale, maybe an enormous scale, especially if you're talking about, $100 billion data center. That's a lot bigger scale than most of us ever touch. But we have written data and file storage. It's personal stuff, business stuff. Business stuff, that's your customer data and your planning documents and things of that nature. If you had to do compute resource, that you got something fancy you're trying to actually accomplish, and I'll give a couple of examples during my talk here. And apparently I've left off something, or it got deleted. So if you were the car wash out there and you wanted to know, how do I get some more customers? Well, the customers drive by there all the time. How do you attract them? How many are there? Can you get a count without having somebody sit out by the road and go with a little clicker? 1, 2, 3, yeah. Okay, put a camera out, let the camera passively collect stuff up. Figure out a way to count how many cars went by. Oh, look, how many are coming in? How many of them are red? Let's have a red car day special. Yeah, okay, maybe that's a good idea. I don't know, but that would be a thing you could find out if you had compute resource available to capture that and count them for you and sort them up and things like that. So it's kind of like what you'd hear of Amazon Web Services, but they are weird and they are not cheap. And my intent would be certainly to be cheaper and easier than that. But the key element of difference between those horrifying things in Northern Virginia that are enormous, that everybody hates because they're gigantic and unattractive, is to use what's available now. Use an existing building, use existing power, not try and say, well, we're gonna spend 3 years and we're gonna dig up this great big farm field over here, and then we're gonna pour 1,000 yards of concrete, and it's gonna be bigger than a football field and not pretty. Well, you can fix that by putting trees around it so nobody can see it, but use an existing building. There are buildings everywhere. Do you know what's going on inside them? No, you don't care. Maybe there's nothing going on, and if it's just a building that's been there and you've looked at it for 20 years, whatever, you know. Use existing power. I don't want to bring in great big new loads of power. That's always a big ass hassle and very expensive to do. You know, preferably use some existing cooling if you can. If that's not quite enough, I would be willing to say, we'll do a little more, but not a huge amount, right? Stay within the footprint that we have to work with, use what's there. If you outgrow that, it's like, all right, well, we're doing another one somewhere else. Yeah. So you could do this all very incrementally as well. Or as I say, start with, you'll hear me say reuse an existing building a bunch here, because that's a major element of the idea. And I'm not the only person thinking about this way. I have read about others elsewhere in the country with the same approach, use an existing building. Okay? So I don't have to build one. You could move in on day one, and if you've got an extension cord and you've got your network connection, you could be online immediately. You don't have to spend very much money. You know, it might take 6 hours, 8 hours, day or two. You don't have to buy all the computing up front. And sure enough, if the tariffs go away, it'll be simpler to move forward. Those are really painful here right now. You can design for this so that the growth is manageable incrementally. You don't have to fill the building with everything on day one. You can do a little bit as you approach the, I've got enough customers, I'm filling up, I need to do some more, you add some more, you add some more. This is not a case where you have to have a bunch of construction equipment in place before you can do anything. You can go very small to begin with. And so if it doesn't work in a year, well, you didn't make a big commitment. It wasn't too hard to do, right? So in our classic real estate fashion, this is all, as much as anything, is location, location, location. We reuse an existing building, repurpose what's there. Even here in Madison, a place with not a whole lot of buildings, there are some unused buildings because it's just how things go. Other counties have more, as you would expect. My favorite location is this Emmy Lou's spot right by Food Line. It used to be Family Dollar prior to that. It's just one big empty room, and I'm going to have a picture of how I would use it if I were going to. Box Inn is the right size and shape. I got no idea what's going on there, but it's the right size and shape to do small data center that reuses an existing building. The Plow and Hearth Warehouse, same sort of thing. My impression is that they aren't exactly interested in the idea, but it's the size and shape that's the good thing there. And then the general store that's behind my office, also kind of the right size and shape. It's garbage. That is the worst building in the county probably. I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to be there when the front door was open. I recommend that you not, in fact, do that. The smell on the inside is horrifying. That building would have to be demolished down to the dirt and rebuilt. But the location, you know what? Route 29's right there. Power's right there. A lot of data fiber right there. There's an enormous amount of that here in Madison, which most counties don't actually have. Right? So what are our basic needs? Building, space, power, cooling. So this is on the right here, a little quickie diagram. That's the shape of the Emmy Lou's facility over by Food Line. It is 8,000 square feet. You can see what I've drawn here is that it would be possible in that shape to have 6 rows of racks. You've all seen photographs of this stuff. Rack, 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 rack. Okay, group of 20. That's my cluster size that I like to work with. Row of 20, row of 20, row of 20. So you could put 6 of them in there. Right? That's 125 racks all total at that point. Fits nicely into that space. There's walk around there. You need to have, it's got these little square blue rectangles on the left there. Workbenches to assemble things that are going to go into the racks or to pull something out if you had to repair it. I would be willing to go up to 20,000 square feet. That would be not a problem. And you could easily probably at that size put triple this amount of rows in there. Have been looking at some other spaces, and I've got a couple other CAD drawings for other locations. That seems to be about the right thing. Back in the fall, I was looking at a spot in Roanoke that was 75,000 square feet, which is 50% bigger than a football field. So if you can imagine what a football field is like, this thing was huge. 50-foot ceilings, big open on the inside. Used to be a York air conditioning manufacturing plant. So they had great, huge cranes that used to roll down and carry stuff. And it was not terribly expensive. $50,000 a month was the asking price, and that feels expensive on our personal level. But for that much space to work with, it's like nothing. It wouldn't go tiny because then you can't really do enough in that kind of space. My power estimate is that you want about 10 kilowatts per rack. So a row of 20 racks is going to be 200, 210 kilowatts. The 6 rows in the diagram earlier, yeah, so that's a meg and a quarter, and you need a little bit of overhead for cooling ability as well. So we need new transformers there to hit the likely sort of 2 megawatt peak. But if they've got a meg now, you know what? Could get halfway done without touching anything at all in terms of any kind of change. I would want to eventually have generators out back. Generators, these kind of things, it turns out they're a whole lot smaller than you think they are. One smaller than a 20-foot cargo container. And so there's room enough to put 2 or 3 of those out behind. No one would see them because kind of the front by the road is tree blocked and so forth. Easy to do to manage that. You can just get a secondhand generator because there's plenty of those on the market. It turns out they're not expensive. They're easily portable. Could be just dropped in place. You get 2 choices of what powers them, diesel and natural gas. I don't like diesel. Diesel is disgusting stuff. I wouldn't want to mess with that. Natural gas, pretty easy to work with. And part of the reason you do that is, as we all know here, REC's electric power is not 100% reliable. You know, we all had the power goes out at home, power's out in town, power's out through the valley over there, and there's a whole bunch of dead stuff. So you got to have some, the customers expect the power to be live all the time and things to stay running. So you need backup generator. I would put battery backup system stuff in each rack, so as not to have a great big bank of battery things down the wall or something. I have seen that kind of thing. Visited a place in North Carolina last year where they had battery backup system. I asked how long the battery was supposed to last, and they said 45 seconds. And they had a lot of bloody batteries, and that's all it was going to do. And it only took 5 for their generator to come online in case of an outage, so that 45 seconds was enough just to bridge over between the incoming Duke Power stuff and their generator generation. Good jazz. Ideally, of course, these things never get used. You would prefer that they never actually come on except to do their self-test, because if they come on, that means everybody's got power problems. And they're not, like I said, we're at 400K there. It's possible to buy these things, and they're not terribly expensive. Cooling, not that big a deal, I think, on this small scale, right? I would be surprised if it took as much as 500 kW of power for that, but I could. I would not attempt to do water-related cooling of any kind. Madison's water is not reliable. You can see how dry over the last 6 months our creeks are. They're ankle deep. There's not enough water there to do anything useful unless you were to say, well, off that direction towards the mountains, I'm going to dredge out a whole new water reservoir on a creek that overflows and floods big time every year in the spring. And now, okay, maybe you've got enough cooling water to work with, but that's just like, well, we're going to build a whole new building. You know what? Madison is the wrong place to be doing this stuff. Okay? So I'm thinking that the power overall is under 2 megawatts. Pretty reasonable, I think, and we haven't made any huge change to anything anywhere for the entire concept. So revenue potential out of this, I think, rent things at $0.01 an hour. Okay? It's about the cheapest that's mathematically convenient to work with in terms of billing. Everybody can understand $0.01 an hour. Configuring a single rack, there's a lot of variations of what could go into that, but the general mix is going to produce about 10K in revenue, gross revenue per month per rack, which ends up, on the next slide, I said, ends up being as much as $15 million a year. And, automate the billing payments, and it's all clean. You don't got minimal horsing around with anything there. the CapEx has gotten uncomfortable over the last year. Because of the tariffs, the cost of disk drives has basically doubled. You can get used ones and they cost, used device price because they're older. But brand new ones, which I would want to be buying, they, instead of costing $400, they now cost $900, which means that this has all gotten a good bit more expensive than it used to be. So what a rack would have cost $50,000 to populate fully, it's now unfortunately more like 100, which means a row of these is going to be more like approaching 2 million. So we're talking for 6 rows, yeah, boy, $10 million worth of CapEx. But as I said a minute ago, incremental. You do a little at a time, a little at a time. You don't got to blow $2 million on day one. You can go with a small amount of stuff and grow a little and feed that, bootstrap that on an ongoing basis until you have spent that 10 million without having to have gotten 10 million up front. For OpEx, I think, your primary cost there is your employees. An effort like this, an activity like this doesn't involve a lot of employees, so it's not a huge quantity of people. Mostly it's just, you don't got guys, you don't yourself touch your computer constantly. You're not fiddling, oh, I got to open the side and I got to do stuff. You do as little of that as you can get away with, just because you mostly don't want to horse around with that stuff, right? Employee costs probably $200K a month. Power, a little bit, not huge. Internet access, pretty cheap in comparison. To rent the Emmylou space right now, the asking price is $7,000. So it's all very affordable. I'm estimating for a full building there. The maintenance might be $10K, you got your usual taxes, legal, accounting, going on, blah, blah, blah. So for the employees, these are not by any means minimum wage jobs. And you do need people 3 shifts. If customers have got a problem in the middle of the night, you need somebody who's awake and there who can address things, even if the address things was, I don't know what to do. I better get Clint out of bed and have him drive in here and we'll figure out what's going on, which, could well be the case. But somebody in the middle of the night, that's probably a couple of people to do something there, to be available. You need, during the daytime, you'd need people and network engineer kind of folks, a couple of salespeople who've got to do tech support and help a customer along. I would want to hire a couple of kids from the high school, right, for daytime job. I'm not going to say, oh, God, you guys got to be up here at 2 a.m. No, not good. But they could help assemble all of this stuff. If we think back to that first picture, somebody's got to put the things in the rack and take them out and assemble what goes inside. And the fastest I have been able to imagine getting that done, if you had 6 or 8 people, is that you can get 1 rack configured per day. So 120 racks is going to take, 6 months at that rate to get that done. With just a couple of people, maybe longer than that. So these are decent long-term jobs, good intern jobs. Even if that was to come in on Saturday and learn how to do stuff, I would definitely want to do that kind of thing. And a couple of managers, and everybody gets paid pretty well for this, because this is non-trivial stuff. You don't just sort of walk in cold and become an expert anytime quickly. These are the kind of services I would be wanting to provide. So data and file storage, compute power. I will have, on an experimental basis here soon, I hope in a couple of weeks, things that are chat, talk, video like Zoom, but Zoom is a little less secure than you would like, unfortunately. I was talking to a computer security acquaintance a couple of days ago about that, and he told me something I didn't know, and I thought, oh yeah, that isn't good. So, shared docs editing, I'll have that kind of jazz. My conclusion would be that this can be done here. It's not trivial to do, but it can be done on a small scale. It could be done here or really just about anywhere. It doesn't need a lot of unusual infrastructure, right? 3 pieces: power, building, fiber internet. You're ready to go. Doesn't have to be expensive, because you can buy a lot of very, very good used equipment to do this. I have things in my office that I am using all the time that are 15 years old. And they work just like they did 15 years ago. They don't go, they either go bad or they stay good for a very long time. And I have been pleased over the years to see just how well they hold up. The idea of planned obsolescence, well, by golly, there's a new model every couple of years, which means that the sweet spot for what you could buy new gets better every couple of years and is without getting more expensive when you need to buy things, which is great. So that where I say a rack would cost $50,000 to do brand new, if you bought that 10 times that price, right? So $500,000 or more, depending on exactly what you're wanting to put in it. An interesting economic boost to the county. Right? I hope not to get gouged on taxes, but the money is decent to do it. The employment count is less than I would want, maybe, but for a space the size of Emmy Lou's is about appropriate. If you had a retail store and you might have a handful of people working there, you would not have people there third shift. So we do have some unusual hours needed to support this kind of activity. And if it turned out, oh, there's another building that I don't know about today that's going to be available soon for whatever reason, the other direction in the county that I've never down a road I haven't been down, yeah, well, that would be okay too, as long as we meet the basic needs of having an appropriate space, an adequate amount of power, and some kind of fiber internet service. We can go anywhere almost to do that.
Well, Clint, this is interesting. I know that Judd and I spent some time with you discussing this, and probably at this point, I would say that we would be, we're still willing here in the county to help you with this any way we can. I know Tracy's working with you, and is there anybody on the committee has any questions for Mr. Hyde?
I do, Mr. Chairman, real quick. I heard you mention Emily Lou, so it sounds like scalability might be what you're looking at first. But did you mention you have entertained a location like Plow and Hearth? Or
I have asked about it. Right? So I'm not familiar with all the buildings in the county, but certainly anything up and down 29, we see these all plenty often enough. So the ones that I mentioned were those specific things. That would be an okay location, right? I just don't, my impression was from talking to a friend who's a real estate agent here who sort of made a little bit of inquiry for me, that that would be a second choice, not a first choice. It sounded like they were not that keen on the idea and mostly wanted to just rent out as warehouse space rather than anything else.
Yeah, because we had spoken to them when I brought in the Austrian company there. The other thing about Plow and Hearth is the warehouse space has no AC to start with.
Yeah, so that would need an upgrade right off the bat. I mean, not in January, obviously. But to survive through a summer, we would need to be addressing that kind of thing, that kind of need pretty damn fast. But otherwise, they said, you just need X amount of square feet, 5,000 minimum, 10,000 preferably,
You close with it.
megawatt or couple of megawatts, and a way to have adequate data fiber. Many places fall short right away on data fiber. That's a
Clint, that was my question.
less easy thing.
We have all this
Yeah.
this fiber going down 29, dark fiber. Does that help you being that close to 29, or how does that work?
Oh, yeah, because that, I have fiber in my office, and that actually comes from Main Street, not 29. But the farther you get away from 29, all of a sudden the cost of that just skyrockets, because if you wanted to say, well, there's this great spot, an old barn out in the field, and it's got a bunch of power because I had, dairy equipment or whatever in there, and but it's a mile and a half away or 2 miles away from any kind of fiber. Oh,
Okay, so-
that's expensive to get that stuff brought in like that. That's
So the closer to 29, the better.
100,000 a mile is sort of the bottom end price for
Okay,
doing that.
thanks.
Yeah, so it can get really expensive, but the closer you are, that's why I say location. You want to be in near adequate amount of power and near fiber. And those are the only infrastructure support things that you need, as long as you aren't saying, well, I want to stick a tube in the river and pull water out of it. A lot of opportunity there.
You
You had mentioned natural gas. Did you mean propane, or are you actually contemplating a spur?
So that would have to be tank gas, not a line coming from somewhere else. Have been looking at
Still,
a
we're
location
close.
in Harrisonburg where there is in fact a natural gas pipe not terribly far away. So we've been thinking about that idea as a growth source to feed maybe a new power generation. That location happens to have a 25 megawatt substation about a mile away that is grossly underutilized at the moment, so there's 10 to 15 available immediately off of that. To go beyond that is either bring in more towers and more wires with bigger stuff, or to figure out how to get a gas pipe through. And this is at the edge of the city, so it's like right out the side is big open farm space, so that's where the pipe is.
All right, Clint, thank you very much. We're running kind of a tight schedule, but I do appreciate you coming out and talking to us.
Roger that.
Very
Happy to
much.
talk to anybody about it anytime, in general about concepts.
All right, thank you. So we have a presentation on a discussion on proposed for a Fab Lab, which is a fabrication laboratory. That's what it's short for, but it's a maker space of sorts. The idea would be it has a regular community use that would be a membership program. So anyone in the community, not necessarily within the zip code, but that would apply for a membership, would have access to utilize the different spaces within, as well as could have a work vocational training program aspect that would bring in different teachers for trades as well as artisanal trades and some of the new, more modern techs. So what are the different spaces that this Fab Lab or maker space would have? Well, woodworking is one of them. Metalworking is another one. And these are very broad sections, but they all kind of entertain the same tool utilization and things like that. So you have metals, fibers is another one. That would include things like sewing, which can then delve deeper into things like embroidery or upholstery for classic cars, which are very popular around here. Metal would do things like, of course, welding, sheet metal work, understanding of the complex parts of the chemical side to it, as well as the practical side to how to put it together. In this space, it is also possible to use more of the modern technologies. So there's CNCing, of course there's metal lathes that people still do and utilize by hand, but now there's computer programs in which you draw these 3D pieces, complex parts for boats and cars and engines, which especially for a community like us that relies on agricultural, and some of us have really, really, really old 1930s things they try to keep alive, they have basic parts that are just no longer available. This would give the tech side to that historic piece as well and bring those together, kind of bridge that. So not just new and modern things. A facility like this, when fully decked out, yeah, you could build an airplane and fly it. However, you can also put together pieces to revive a lot of the historical pieces and parts. I would recommend a leather shop. It goes together with our equestrian side, as well as a lot of agricultural pieces, and then it also ties in with the sewing aspect of things. I'm a 30-year seamstress, and I have requests all the time. I haven't sewn in years for people. Hey, can you make me XYZ, and particularly farm equipment, bridal pieces, things of my grandfather had, my uncle just gave me, can we revive this? So there's a lot of local community use through all the generations of Madison County, but it's bringing the kids in with something that from high school is another alternative or in, tangent with college that gives them a skill set that is something that they can independently pursue as a business. They could tie into a further vocational school training, but it gets their hands dirty in a lot of different aspects and lets them try things that are a little more approachable and familiar. Maybe they did wood shop because they're, with their grandfather, but since that's not as readily available in schools, it would kind of give that extra side of interest for people. like I said, it would have different departments and you could build them out. The great part about this is there is a membership fee, so that would bring in income, but it is predominantly funded by being educational and working with the county government grants. We were able to utilize the government grant programs, and there's quite a few of them that will allow for, particularly in vocational trainings and niche trainings, you kind of go after what is the grant for the woodworking, for a luthier program. Like, what can you do within woodworking that has something that, we can find teachers for? I've had the pleasure of working with a Fab Lab up in Pennsylvania. It's about an hour outside of New York City, and I cannot tell you the people that come from all kinds of famous, for lack of a better term, walks of life to teach classes there. Woodcraft Magazine and Woodworking Magazine has their editor come teach a lab there because they have the facility, and people from all over the world come to our luthier program, which is now sponsored by Martin Guitar. So talking to these teachers, they would love to travel and offer seminars and programs. I was speaking alongside with a lot of the artisans I work with that travel around and sell their crafts and do different artisanal shows. They would also love to come and do everything from pottery and 2D painting and sculpture to the metalworking, blacksmithing. Again, that historic side of where all of these things have then morphed into the CNC and 3D printing and things like that. And they all kind of now work in tandem to keep it all alive. So it would need, obviously, a space to do this in that is climate controlled, so people can utilize some more high-tech machines without dust being in the way. There's dust collection systems and things, your air purifiers to keep it safe. There would be PPE stations that our members would then be trained on of, okay, here you have to wear goggles, and here you have to wear a full mask, and this is what you utilize and do. As the members get further trained or certified, they can use the different machinery. Then, as it naturally comes, a lot of our members become our teachers, our regular teachers. And then we offer classes. We work with the community college closely, so if we have part of their class that wants to use part of the space, they rent that out, and so on and so forth with teacher sharing and things of that nature, which is another income and resource. So that's my proposal to kind of help with everything from vocational work, outreach, and programs to give Madison a reason for people to come from also the adjoining counties, as well as give our Madisonians ways to fly further, and they can bring more resources and things.
Any questions, folks? I have a few. Judd, did you want to start?
Yeah, just real quick. So Jim and I and a couple of other board members and county staff went down to talk to our senator and representative during Government Day. And while we were waiting for him, I pulled aside his executive assistant. It's probably not he's the director of something, but anyway, he works closely with Senator Reeves. And I asked him about this, like, where do we get the money? How can we do that? How can you help us, or how can we help you help us? And he basically said, like, grants, we might see you doing some work to get this going before we jump in and really help. And so by midsummer, we can start then they can start requesting money for us if we get it all ready and put it all together. He'll help us then. So we really have to do some work, and I'm going to help, and to get these things rolling, and then go back to them with a package that makes it easy for them to get in front of the reps and get this done.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, Judd, is you'd like to take the lead on this with Molly and
Co-lead.
Kelly? All right, that sounds great. Anybody else have any questions?
Got a comment on this one. I was, we were talking about this with Mr. Wilkes earlier before he walked up here. And he mentioned that the ICC, which is the International Code Council, has a division that they call Tech Training 2.0, in which they try to mesh the work vocational training into these type of programs. And so there could be money available. There definitely could be an accredited source available to go along with one of these programs to try to help, get some foundation under it to get started. Of course, you could expand for your other wants and needs to go along with that. But I think it'd be worth coordinating. He was kind enough to try to put some information together on that. He's working on it. And so I'm sure in the short term, I'll have some information to share about that and making it mesh.
I've seen, like, in the last few weeks, Wall Street Journal's had several articles on people that are jumping out of white-collar jobs because they're worried about what's happening downsizing and everything that's going on, and picking up these trades. And it's both men and women in their mid to 20s to mid 30s, 40s, and are getting out of it and getting training and going back to trade schools to be able to get into that trade school or come out of that trade school with a job that's secure and a good paying job, like 6 figures. So that's what we're looking for, not just the high school students, which are gonna be great, and not just old guys like me that wanna go mess around with a bandsaw, but we want these people that are in their 20s and 30s that may have not gone to college, or they've gone to college and started a white-collar job and don't like it, don't wanna be in an office. This is a perfect opportunity for them to.
This seems like a great
what they
fit.
do. Yeah.
You know, also in the audience today, I invited 2 folks to come and join us today, specifically related to this. Ms. Lauren Gordon, who is on our school board, and she could be a person to contact. Also, Mr. Weekly's on the CTE committee, correct? Okay, so we've got some good leads. And then I also invited Bonnie Dixon from the library, and I don't know how this could possibly tie in with. Well, you know what I'm 50 years behind time. She did get married at some point. Okay.
So, I mean, just FYI,
That's what
and I brought this up to
seasonality
you,
means.
I brought this up before, but when I was in Finland, and I went to the library there, the public library, and they have this in the basement. And we're, yeah. Okay.
is the expense. I was doing some looking, and we would have to dig deep if this is a viable, if we really want to do this.
Well, I don't know how much space you have down in the basement, but what I was thinking, and the grant, I mean, we're trying to get grants and money for this, not just coming out of the library budget. But it might not work, but when we talked, that's what came up. Okay. All right. Okay.
Swing and a miss, that's okay.
Sacred ground, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we're just brainstorming for spaces, so I didn't mean to assume that we would take that.
But thanks, Jed. I'd like to keep Bonnie in the loop with this if possible, and some other things. And then Ms. Gordon as well.
Once Jim mentioned it, I was looking it up and doing some research on it. You need artisans and you need people who are of that bent. It is an interesting concept.
All right, thank y'all. Looking forward to this. I think this has got a lot of promise as well. All right, our third presentation is from Anthony Jewett. He's our elected member to the Culpeper Soil and Water Conservation District, one of 2 Madisonians that are elected to that board. And he's going to present on a unique topic, something that's been gaining traction in the last couple of years, and I see there's a bill in the General Assembly that's looking at promoting this. But I'll let him get into it and explain once he gets set up.
I was asked to speak on agrivoltaics. I made a presentation at request. I don't want people to see my well-organized flash drive files.
We are on a limited schedule, Mr. Jewett.
Sign in. No, I don't want to sign in. What do you mean? Oh. You've got to be kidding.
Kim, will you please help him? Yeah, go ahead while he's getting
Okay.
ready.
Well, he's getting ready. To the point of the Fab Lab, particularly knowing that you all are in the audience, the expense if you look up tech toys makes you go crazy, and then you go, how are we going to pay for the filament? How are we going to pay for this and that? I have found the people that perpetuate art, their goal is to perpetuate art, and whatever that means. And sometimes that's tech, and sometimes that's clay, and sometimes that's paint, whatever that means. And I have chatted with, before presenting this, because that's a mean lore without even a bait on it. Would you be willing to help? Could we have sponsors for? Could we have your old equipment? So the lab I work with has the pleasure of getting $2 to $5 million in grants every year. We have an $8 million facility that continues to be updated, and there is nothing wrong with last year's model, in my opinion. So they have said that generously we could look at purchasing at a severe discount, or one of those, we don't have space, please get rid of it rate. I've also looked at a lot of different auctions, as well as talked to different artistic and educational patronage people that I know from around the country working with artisans that have said, oh, if you have space, we will fill it with fun things to do and provide our time. Because we have so many lovely places to stay, they're like, oh, I could come stay there a week. Yeah, teach a class 3 days a week. That sounds great. And so we'd have those different offerings from the tech people that, change of scenery is always good for everybody, change of environment. But
And yet he works for a software company, by the way. It's one of the biggest orchestration software in the world.
So, this isn't my fault. I made a PowerPoint presentation, and Microsoft is like, do you have a product key for that? Even though I know the county has. I know the county has, like,
Does this have something to do with the thing Alan sent out?
everywhere's.
Yeah, they said
This
Microsoft
has been a nightmare
365 was
overall.
having issues. It's not his
You?
fault.
Great. It makes it easy, doesn't it?
Maybe you could borrow Mr. Hyde's laptop if he would let you.
mind that?
Or, go ahead, Jim.
Mr. Jewett, if you,
Are there?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if Mr. Jewett would like to send me his presentation, I'm happy to present while he talks, in just an email.
I don't have a computer for it.
Yeah.
Well, if Mr. Hyde has open office, that will actually open PowerPoint files.
Kim, you can.
How about if you go ahead and start talking about this, well, everybody fixes your technical problem.
It's not my
Kim,
technical
Kim,
problem.
go ahead and email him the.
This is why I don't like Microsoft, okay? Yeah.
In fact, let me
I
get
can't,
plugged in.
normally everyone's like, Microsoft
the other
product,
end.
Microsoft product. If I'd known this, I would have done open office or a PDF file. All right. So anyway, agrivoltaics. Fortunately, it was a short PowerPoint, but quite simply put, it is a procedure, means of doing business that originally originated, or that has been pioneered in Europe and Asia. It quite simply means co-locating solar power generation with agriculture. Now, over time, that has been expanded to include other forms of green energy generation. But why am I talking about all of this? Our legislature has proposed a bill, HB 899. Forgive me, I'm going off my head with this one. Which updates some definitions around agrivoltaics and also proposes setting forth an advisory commission. So it does make sure to define agrivoltaics itself. In this bill, it calls it the intentional co-location of ag and renewable energy. It says in a lot more words than that, but that's a summary. It defines an energy storage facility, which is a facility capable of absorbing, storing, and discharging energy. And then it defines a small renewable energy project. I would get to that on the next slide because there's some interesting things about that. So with the bill and the definitions, it sets forth limitations for various types of agriculture. I probably should go back. Does anyone have any questions about what agrivoltaics is so far? Don't need an example? Good, I can skip that. So, back to the bill and the small renewable energy project as their definition. It's roughly about, or it's exactly 150 megawatt hours for, or sorry, 150 megawatts. Oh, I've got it up. Thank you.
You just tell me where and when.
Yes, we've got, actually, no, I can go back. So, did I include? Yeah, no, go back. Oh, no, forward, sorry, forward. Yes, sir. I needed to finish up here. The other thing that this bill does is it calls for the creation of an advisory panel that will explore the creation of new practices, grants, regulations, etc. Some of the organizations that are intended to be on this, it will be through the Virginia Cooperative Extension. They want the Virginia Association, or representatives from the Virginia Association of Counties, VA Farm Bureau Federation, the Agribusiness Council, the Association of Soil and Water Conservation Districts, the Forestry Association, the Piedmont Environmental Council, American Farmland Trust, and the Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware Association of Electric Co-ops, and then various reps of solar industry, electric utilities, and other relevant stakeholders as the cooperative extension deems fit. There is also a funding request in there for additional funding to the extension office to pay for this. It's at $50,000, but as it was explained to me by a member of staff, that is more than likely just a placeholder for now. So from what I can tell with the overall bill, it's here's some definitions, and then we're going to form a committee to figure out what we do next. So, next slide. I wanted to do I did some quick math around the various limitations, which I'll go over now. A small renewable energy project, if it is wind or solar, is 150 megawatts. So some quick math on that, that would be 750 acres of solar panels and about 3,000 acres of wind turbines. Hydroelectric and geothermal plants are limited to 100 megawatts. I contacted the lady sponsoring the bill. I have not heard back. I'm a little curious as to why geothermal and hydroelectric are arbitrarily less. They vary widely on terrain. Now, I know that Madison actually has a history where we had a small hydroelectric generation. There's also a small hydroelectric generation in Rapidan as well.
Was.
Oh, did it shut down too?
Yes.
And then the energy storage facilities are limited to 150 megawatts, which, depending on battery size, changes the acreage required immensely. Something I did find interesting is the bill only talks about essentially batteries. They define it as, storing energy through chemical reactions. Long story short, batteries. They don't include things such as, trying to think of the term for it, but water batteries. That you'll see like in the Bath County Water Project, where they actually use water to store electricity and energy. So 1 megawatt can theoretically power between 600 and 700 homes. 600 is on the rough estimate for rural central Virginia. So with one of these projects, in theory, if it was at max capacity, we could generate enough power to fit all the households in our county. I thought this was just an interesting way of visualizing what they've laid out so far in the definitions, because otherwise it's just a bunch of numbers. And then I have some various things for additional reading, some of the places I did on the next slide for that I used for my calculation, as well as where you can look further. The U.S. federal government did actually do some pilot programs into this as well around 2022. However, from what I can tell, they haven't really published any findings yet, and it's not likely that funding will be continued for them, at least not in the near future. Like I said, I did reach out to the office of the legislator that is sponsoring this, and I'm hoping to hear back, because I have some questions who they're potentially basing this off of.
All right, there's a couple of things I wanted to mention before I open for questions. And the reason I asked you to come and present today was because you didn't have a picture of it on this presentation, but one of the ways that this is implemented in the Midwest, I've seen examples of where they actually place horizontal solar panels around the edge of fields and in waterways. And I think this is something that ought to be investigated. I know that I've talked to the extension agent here in Madison, and I volunteered our operation to do a pilot project if this progresses. I think this is one way to keep Madison, more of Madison in farmland while also increasing the tax base and income for farming families.
Yes, very much so. I would say that like the typical examples of that are running sheep and cattle underneath your solar panels or products that are shade tolerant or shade preferred, like common example is lettuce. So,
I would just add, Mr. Chairman, it's been some years ago, someone came to us, they were thinking about putting a windmill or something on a farm, but there's height and topography that goes for that too, not just the acreage requirement. So we know the efficiency of solar is relatively low, but it'd be interesting as this bill tracks through that they have any data points on the efficiency of wind, taking in those other factors.
I would just like to add too, the geothermal, that's one I personally find interesting. However, I'm not sure we're a good county for that. Virginia Tech, in their stuff said that Bath County is, basically, Western Virginia is gonna be more beneficial to that.
Not as much rock or?
Oh, Hot Springs? You dig deep enough.
Yeah, and all the money pits.
There's geothermal HVAC systems in this county right now. There are geothermal HVAC systems in the county right now for your homes.
All right, we've run out of time. Thank you for bringing that. But that's something we're going to keep a close eye on in the county, because if that is something that will move forward, it's something we would fit for economic development here, possibly. So we're going to get on the lead on it if we can.
And certainly I will be happy to update the county with any information from the Soil
I
and Water
appreciate
District,
that.
particularly if our district has any direct involvement in the process.
Appreciate that, sir.
Actually, could I have a hard copy to put in our minutes?
Of the PowerPoints?
Yeah.
All right, we are past time. We've got a board supervisor meeting coming up. So I think we've covered what we set out to cover. We didn't get to the legislative update, but we can do that again next month when bills are finally passed and signed or whatever. Thank y'all very much. See y'all next month.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. And do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank y'all.